All right, let's set the scene. It's the early 1990s. You're driving down a long stretch of empty highway somewhere between Oregon and Wyoming. Big sky, gas station coffee, and the guy next to you in the diner booth, just another trucker passing through. Quiet, big hands, talks about his kids, wears steel-toe boots. Seems normal enough, right? But here's what you don't know. That guy, he's about to become one of the most disturbing names in true crime history. You'll know him by his calling card, a smiley face drawn in pen at the bottom of a letter. And the man behind it, people call him the Happy Face Killer. But his real name was Keith Jesperson. Now, Happy Face didn't make waves with flashy headlines at first. He moved silently, state to state, truck stop to truck stop, with a calm face and an empty conscience. While the rest of the world clocked in and out of 9 to 5s, he was working the night shift on something unthinkable. His first known victim, a woman named Tanja Bennett in 1990. She met Jesperson at a bar near Portland, and what started as a night out ended differently. But here's where the story takes a wild detour. The police arrest someone else, a couple actually. They confess, the media runs it, everyone claps, justice served, case closed, except it wasn't. And Happy Face? He hated that someone else was getting the attention. So what does he do? He writes an anonymous letter to a newspaper editor. Lays out every detail only the real person would know. At the bottom, a smiley face. That's the moment everything changes. More letters start arriving. He brags, he teases, he signs off with that twisted emoji. And suddenly the press gives him a name, the Happy Face Killer. But it wasn't about the name. It was about the power. Happy Face continued traveling coast to coast. Long-haul trucking routes became his hunting ground. Rest stops, dive bars, lonely highways. Everywhere he went, someone disappeared. Authorities would later connect him to at least 8 victims, maybe more. Most were women in vulnerable situations. Some worked the streets. Others were just down on their luck. All had one thing in common. They crossed paths with a man who smiled on the outside, but had something dark simmering underneath. And it gets even colder. He didn't just leave evidence behind. He left stories, letters mailed to law enforcement and newspapers, pages filled with chilling confidence, as if he was writing fan mail to himself. While the FBI and local PD were scrambling to catch up, Happy Face was already 10 steps ahead, blending in, waving hello at truck stops, chatting up waitresses like he wasn't the author of half the horror on their missing persons boards. And while the public was trying to piece together who this guy was, one person already knew him, a teenage girl living in Oregon, who thought her dad was just another tired trucker trying to make ends meet. But that girl was about to find out the truth, and when she did, it would flip her life inside out and turn her into one of the loudest voices in true crime. If you're still watching, you're already in deep. Go ahead, like, comment, and subscribe before this gets even more twisted. You don't want to miss how this one ends. Let's keep going. So now we shift focus. We've seen what Happy Face was doing out there, smiling through letters, driving through states, living 2 lives. But back home in Oregon, there's a girl. Her name is Melissa Moore, and she thinks her dad is just a long-haul trucker with a strict streak. Sometimes he's funny, sometimes he's cold, and sometimes he's terrifying in ways she can't quite explain. There were moments she remembers years later with a pit in her stomach, like when he calmly described how to dispose of a body. Or the time he twisted the head off a bird in front of her, just to show her how nature works. Or how he used to talk about people, especially women, with this thinly veiled disgust. But she was a kid. She didn't know how to process it. She thought maybe all dads were like that. That silence meant safety. That weird behavior was just being tough. Then came 1995. Melissa was in high school, just another teenager with homework, friends, and drama that felt like the end of the world, until something actually did feel like the end of the world. One day, she's at school when someone pulls her aside. They ask her, "Is your dad Keith Jesperson?" She nods, and they say, "You need to see the news." The next thing she sees is his face on TV, mugshot, name, and the words, "Happy Face Killer Suspect Identified." Melissa doesn't even know how to react. Her body goes numb. It's not just shock. It's like the ground beneath her rearranged its shape. She gets home and everything starts moving in slow motion. Her mom is already breaking down. Police are everywhere. Journalists swarm their front lawn. And Melissa? She's 15 years old and learning for the first time that the man who taught her how to ride a bike was the same man who had spent the last 5 years writing anonymous letters to the press, bragging about women who never made it home. She reads about how he traveled from state to state, how he signed letters with smiley faces, how his victims weren't just statistics, they were real people, with names, with families. And she starts remembering things she buried. Things that don't sound like weird dad moments anymore. Like how he always talked about justice in his own twisted way. How he joked about getting away with stuff. How his eyes would go blank when he was angry. Now she's questioning everything. Was that trip to California just a vacation? Was that long absence just another job? Was he hiding in plain sight, even in their living room? Melissa spirals. She's ashamed. She's scared to go to school. Friends stop talking to her. Teachers look at her differently. And her last name? Now it's a target. And the worst part, she feels like she's part of it. Not because she did anything, but because she shares his blood. So she goes quiet for years, buried in shame, haunted by the fact that every time her dad smiled at her, he might have had something else behind that smile. But Melissa doesn't stay quiet forever. Because what do you do when your life turns into a nightmare and you survive it? You take the mic, you take your pain, and you turn it into a story you control. So that's exactly what she did. Melissa Moore, now in her 20s, made a decision most people in her position wouldn't even consider. Instead of hiding from her past, she stepped right into it. She wrote a book, sat down with producers, let the world hear her voice, the voice of the daughter who grew up in the shadow of one of America's most manipulative serial predators. In 2009, she released her memoir, Shattered Silence. And the title? It couldn't be more accurate. For the first time, she spoke openly about what it was like to grow up with a man who could smile like a dad at the dinner table and then disappear for days, knowing now exactly what he was doing on those trips. She wrote about the guilt, the fear, the constant second-guessing, about how she spent years convincing herself she wasn't like him. And in those pages, she admitted something most people would never have the courage to say out loud, that she had been afraid of her father even before she knew why. But Melissa didn't stop at the book. She launched a true crime podcast, appropriately titled Happy Face. But this time, she wasn't telling his story. She was telling hers, and others like hers. She began investigating other cases, sitting with the families of victims, speaking with the children of offenders, building empathy where most people only see horror. Not excusing it, not minimizing it, but trying to answer the question that haunted her most. How do you live your life when someone you love is capable of the worst thing imaginable? The podcast wasn't just storytelling, it was a form of therapy for her and for others. And it caught fire. People didn't just listen, they connected. Because behind every crime scene and mugshot is a web of lives that got pulled into the blast radius. Melissa used to think she had no right to speak, that her father's crimes meant she had to disappear too. But when she finally spoke out, she became the one voice that could say the thing no one else could. I'm not him. I never was, and I never will be. By 2025, her story had gone beyond the podcast. Paramount Plus picked it up, a full-on dramatized series based on her life. She wasn't played as a victim. She was the center of the narrative, the daughter of darkness who chose the light, and Keith Jesperson, still alive, serving life without parole, a man who tried to control everything with ink, rope, and silence, only to be undone by a teenager who saw him for what he really was. Melissa didn't solve a case. She solved herself. And in doing that, she gave people permission to look at the worst parts of their own story and still move forward. Because surviving horror is one thing, but standing in front of it and telling the world what it did to you, that's power. And Melissa Moore, she turned her father's legacy of pain into a platform for truth. Not his truth, hers. That's the story. Now I want to hear what you think. Drop a comment below. Let's talk about it. And if you like this video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.